Hey guys! So in this video we are going to talk about front-end developers and web designers. So let's get into it. Now, the other day I made a video where I tried to kind of discuss the misconception that I see a lot of people having when they talk about front-end development and such things. And I think it's partly due because there's so much overlap and ambiguity in the different job descriptions and job titles in IT. It's very, very tricky to actually figure out what a job actually means, because some companies use their own terms, some companies have their own way of thinking about what you should be able to do when you have a specific title or whatever you want to call it. And some people make it even worse by calling themselves one thing when they're actually not technically doing that one thing. So I thought I'll try my best to clarify a few things, because I had a subscriber who actually pointed out to me that, or rather we had a good discussion which kind of sparked my idea of making this video, basically, where I thought that maybe defining this will make some sense. So let's first and foremost talk about what I do as a front-end developer, or as somebody who has the sort of title that you would expect. Now, I am no longer a front-end developer. I'm just a regular software developer, full stack developer, whatever you want to call it. But for a long time, I've had that job title. So the misconception that people have about front-end developers is that your job is happening at the UI layer, and to a point that is actually true. However, very few front-end developers have the sort of luxury to exclusively work with just JavaScript, CSS, and HTML, and so forth. It's actually the closest thing I think I can say, in terms of trying to define what a front-end developer is to say that a front-end developer is a person who has an engineering background, or somebody who knows how to write proper software, proper code, stuff of that nature, and has a strong foundation in web UI development. In other words, it's the sort of person who has basically the skills to write logic code, whatever you want, with a focus on UI level programming, basically. So if you're, say that you know Java and you know JavaScript and HTML and CSS and so forth, and you get hired as a front-end developer, what you can expect is that you are most likely going to spend most of your time working with a designer of some sort, or at the very least, you're going to be very much in charge of the UI layer of things. That does not mean that you design the thing. That's where the other part of this comes in. So my personal experiences is something along the lines of this. The company has designers. I have my designer. And the designer and we work together in order to, or rather, the designer tells me, this is what I need from you. And I say, all right, we can build this. Or I say, no, I think you have to rethink this a little bit. And I point out some flaws with limitations with the design. And when it's all said and done, I'm the guy who actually builds the whole thing. That's usually how the interaction goes. A web designer is a different type of creature. It is the sort of person who has a strong foundation in UX, UI design elements. Now, a web designer is, as you may kind of suspect from the name, is a designer that focuses on the web. And the discussions can go, there's a lot of, this is a tricky thing, because a web designer ideally is somebody who actually knows at least the basics, hopefully more, about JavaScript, CSS, HTML. They know the platform. They should know the platform, or rather, if they're going to call themselves web designers. A standard designer it's a tricky thing to define, but let's just say for the sake of argument that a web designer is somebody who knows the web but has the design strength. So a front-end developer is an engineer with a focus on JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. A web designer is a designer with skills within the web platform, such as CSS, HTML, JavaScript. That's the best way I can define this. So what does a web designer do primarily? Well, I can only speak from the designers I've spoken to. They spend a lot of time having everything from discussions with the product manager. They are extremely involved in designing the user experiences, doing user testing, doing research for the product and so forth. They are very much in charge of the vision of the application. And as a web designer, it's actually very beneficial. I had this discussion with the subscriber, and I think that the way that I think about it, because we kind of talked just slightly on, or rather I mentioned, when does one thing make more sense than the other? Because if you think about it, a company who hires a designer and a front-end developer, why wouldn't you just hire a web designer? Well, it kind of depends, because there's tons of reasons why you would have both a front-end developer and a designer. And one of the main reasons is, I suppose, is that it's very tricky to find an individual that is, I'm not going to lie to you, I love design, and I do it at a hobby level. I actually have some design projects myself, but I am not the sort of I would fuck up any major project that I can't make what the really skilled designers can do. They're very good at what they do, and I have a great deal of respect for them. But what I know is how to write very good software, and that's what I can bring to the table. And usually a lot of companies favor this idea of having someone who is very good at design and having somebody who actually can write the code, because it's very tricky to find somebody who is equally good at both. A web designer, on the other hand, is the sort of person who doesn't necessarily have to be a software developer full-time, but it's the sort of person who at the very least has an intimate knowledge of the platform, the web, basically. And sometimes one thing makes more sense than the other. It kind of depends on the project, the company, and the thing basically what the thing you're building. And I see a very good use case, or rather I see reasons why you would pick one over the other in different situations. So it's very hard. I'm not trying to say that one is better than the other, or one approach to having a designer and a front-end developer is better than having a web designer, or vice versa. I'm simply stating that there are different cases for both. And I can tell you from experience that I have a great deal of respect for my designers, but I really wish sometimes that I had a web designer as my colleague, because it's so much easier to have a dialogue with somebody who has the technical background to understand what you're saying. Most of the designers, although they are extremely good at what they do, they have no skills whatsoever within the platform that they are designing for. They are graphic interface people, which is great, but if you could have somebody like that with a technical background, that would have been absolutely amazing. I very much look forward to someday maybe being able to actually work with a web designer, because I've only really worked with designers. So I hope I made this definition a little bit clearer to you. A web designer is a person with web knowledge, such as HTML, CSS, JavaScript. They know that platform. They can write software and so forth. But their focus is on the design and the user experience. That's what they are hired to do. That's that's their strength. A front-end developer is an engineer who has web knowledge, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and so forth. That's the difference. One is a designer, the other is an engineer. Have a great day.